Welcome, fellow Stardust. My name is DeRae, aka rainbowFright, and this is Women in Horror Month with the horror miser, Monty G.
Hey, horror fans, once again, it is me, the horror miser, Monty G. Once again, continuing my special for Women in Horror Month. This time I have the lovely DeRae from rainbowFright on Twitter channel. Say hello, everyone.
Hi, how you doing? Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, it's a very pleasure to have you on. When I first caught your channel, I think might have been over almost close to over a year now since I've seen your channel. One of the things that got me to your channel is that you have that nice voice reflection and you know how to announce. Kind of reminds me, I don't know if you've never heard of Auntie Creeps. She is she's one of those YouTubers that actually does creepy pastas.
Oh,
And she has
yeah.
that nice reflection voice that when she narrates creepy pastas, it brings the creepiness out of a creepy pasta.
I love it. Yes.
Okay. So, like I said, normally what I like to do during Women's Horror Month, I like to do a lot of different things to represent women in horror because I definitely respect women, and certainly for a genre for such as this. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to do this time. I'm going to talk to several women YouTubers in horror, and I decided to bring you on. And one of the first questions I have to ask you is obviously being a woman, out of all the genre in films, why horror of all the genres?
Very good question. Well, first, I'm just a film lover. I love all movies, pretty much all genres. But when I sit and think about it, what do I watch the most? It is horror. And I don't know, I just love the rush I get with horror that I don't necessarily get with other films. It's one of the genres that gets me the most emotional, along with, maybe hardcore dramas that make you cry. That's an emotion that sometimes you seek out when you're wanting to feel a certain emotion. Maybe you'll want to
Mhm.
go watch a movie that makes you cry, or a movie that just makes you, excited and gets your heart pumping. And then comedy is another one where it's not necessarily like a visceral experience, but you're laughing really hard and you're having a good, memorable time. So yeah, horror is just so much different because it's got all the elements kind of in one and just making you go on this thrill ride. And that's what I love about it.
Oh yeah. I have that same impact when I first, because I like all types of movies, but mainly obviously horror is my favorite genre, and I had that same type of experience. Only except for me, I just had this morbid sense of humor. As my mother always thought this is, why do you like watching that crazy stuff? I said, I find it funny. Yes.
Yeah, especially
Uh,
because a lot of horror too back in the day was there was just a lot of comedy horror, so you had the laughter and the gore and scary stuff. So yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I know, because one of my favorite horror films, comedy horror film, is Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein, and
Okay.
I just truly just love it because it's a combination of horror. Because you do actually have oh, darn, why my mind's going blank right now? But yeah, Bela Lugosi playing his role. And I think they couldn't get Boris Karloff to play Frankenstein. They had somebody to play Frankenstein's monster. But the fact that you still have those universal monsters in the comedy of Abbott and Costello, I was always laughing when I watched that film. That film gives you the aspects of laughter and horror.
Yeah, sure. I actually haven't seen it, so I can't speak too much on it, but I feel that.
So what was the actual horror film that really got you hooked into horror?
Well, I feel like it might have been a couple just in my memory as like, a really small child. I remember very early loving Poltergeist. That was something that I watched fairly often. And then I remember Creep Show being one of my early favorites as well. And then Lost Boys. So I feel like that trio right there was kind of on repeat for me as a kid, along with some other things too. But those were like the bigger ones that, I gravitated towards.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah, right, yeah. So basically, yeah, because for me, because I grew up during the '70s, so basically I saw all the great horror films that came out during the '70s. Obviously The Exorcist and The Last House on the Left, I Spit on Your Grave, all those films. So I
Yeah.
watched those films during the '70s. So I always find it fascinating when you see a man of my age in the era I grew up with, and I see people of your age in the horror movies that you first saw. Because it sounds like to me you grew up during the '80s.
Yes, I sure did. Yep, born in 86.
Mhm.
And yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that, like, as a kid, I would have called myself a horror fan. I just was always watching TV, TV shows and movies just all the time if I wasn't maybe outside playing or doing whatever. But yeah, I loved my Nickelodeon and Saturday night or Saturday afternoon and evening TV and all that. So I was just a TV kid.
Mm.
So yeah, 80s is right. 80s and 90s.
Now, one of the things I find fascinating about you is that you actually do enjoy gore. Because I think
Yeah.
one of the horror films you actually like was What's in the Sadness. I think you really love
Oh
that film.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
kind of figured that. What gravitates you? Being a woman, what gravitates you to seeing a lots of gore?
Um, I mean, I don't just like any type of gore. Like, I'm not just gonna go to it because it is gory and bloody.
Mm,
I like there to have some kind of reasoning and cool idea behind it, like with the sadness. And with the sadness, it was just, it's been a minute since I watched it, but I remember just there being the message of something along the lines of just how depraved a person can be, and what, like, what's in our mind, like our deepest darkest thoughts. Like, we can have the thoughts, we just can't act upon them. And that movie is just like what it would be if we all acted upon those, you
mm.
know.
Oh yeah, you definitely get that in that movie.
Yeah. And so I love psychological thrillers. That's one of my favorite subgenres. And if you can get the gore and the psychology behind that movie, like with Saw, that's one of my favorite franchises. And
Mm.
that kind of deals with a psychological angle. And you know, I can't. I don't really know how else to explain or what else to say to explain why I like it. But again, like, I do have my limits. I don't like, poop, body functions like that, like vomit. I can't do that. Like, I'm not into watching that.
Oh no, no, that I don't know. No, some people like that. I don't, that's the reason why I don't like horror films that use that type of set. They think it's funny, and to me, there's
Mhm.
nothing funny about that. That's just rather disgusting. Of all the crazy crap that we've seen in horror films, we actually find that disgusting.
Yes, exactly. It's the same people who find fart humor funny, which, yes, I will laugh at a fart, but,
Hmm.
when they just drag it on for too long, 2-minute fart joke, it's too much.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I've never been a fan of Adam Sandler. It's like, come on, guy, how many more times you gonna tell a fart joke? It's like we got it the first time.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So no, when it comes to women in horror films, obviously one of the first tropes that we have is obviously the so-called final girl.
Yes.
So, what are your thoughts about the final girls? I would say, might as well starting up during the '80s, during the slasher film, than what we actually now have for final girls today.
Sure. So, the final girl is usually the innocent one, the virgin, and she kind of, has the edge on the rest of the cast who's just getting killed off one by one. And it's funny that it's typically a woman, because we do have a few final boys, but they've kind of come in recent years.
Hmm.
And so it's just interesting that women are put in this light in horror films, um, as kind of like not necessarily um, a real person almost. They're just kind of like this trophy or this vehicle for um, men's desires. And the reason why the final girl is a virgin is because she's the good one. And if you're seen on screen as wanting sex or being engaged in sex, you're kind of demonized and you're punished by being killed off,
Hmm.
and that message is kind of, obviously jacked up. And it's kind of been the same throughout the years. Although in recent years, like, starting around the 90s, we've had more men getting killed off, but it is, what's it called? We've had, um, well, it's kind of been, it's been, sorry, let me catch my words here. But basically, um, it's kind of gotten a little bit better, but it's still the same trope. We still have, lots of final women. And yeah, it's just interesting because they're just brought down to just being sex symbols rather than actual full protagonist characters like men in lead roles in other films, including horror, So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think when it comes to Final Girls, we've had sort of like a similar tropes. Whether it was whether it's Laurie Strode, obviously that kind of changed when Sigourney Weaver from Alien. She's been called the Final Girl, but she's more of the kick-ass version. Even though
Right.
most people don't consider Aliens a horror movie, they call it the action sci-fi. But I call it a horror movie because the Alien was a horror movie. It's
Yeah.
just a sci-fi action horror movie.
Hmm.
No, and I think with the advancement in the '90s, I think we see more intelligent final girls. Obviously Sidney
Yeah.
Prescott from Scream. Some of the other final girls that we've seen that are more intelligent and more kick-ass than the typical final girl tropes that we've seen back in the early '80s in the slasher films.
Sure.
Mm.
Definitely. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, obviously, back during the early '80s, one of the problems that I saw during horror films was gratuitous nudity. For some reason, every slasher film had to have women expose themselves.
Yes.
What was your thought about that?
Again, it kind of just brings it back to them just being sex symbols and not really seen as equal humans, just like in real life patriarchal America. And so it's just because, again, with horror, we're getting this almost visceral experience and we're getting this excitement out of it, and these filmmakers are throwing in sex with this violent scene, a lot of times in slashers, and they're just stimulating these men, because the horror genre is geared toward young, usually white men. And so that just was exploding at that time, and there's still a lot of that, but in the last decade or two we've kind of been able to pull away from that and not have so much explicit sex scenes like we did back in the 80s. And so yeah, it was just kind of a form of exploitation that I'm glad is kind of being toned down a little bit.
Oh yeah, there's been some changes as of late from I say from the early '80s slasher films up until now because
Mhm.
even now we're now seeing not just I think the gratuitous nudity has calmed down now, but I think what's happening now is that we're also seeing more nudity from men as opposed to women in horror films. I mean, even
Yeah.
in X, the character we see a male character in full frontal nudity you know and I was like, wow, I was not expecting that. We also see in they slash them, we also see you know naked men's butts, and we also see that also in the remake of Interview with the Vampire. The two main cast, they have plenty of nude scenes, so
Yeah.
it's finally even up the store because it's like this, we shouldn't just exploit women you know just because that's a thing that we did. That's just
Right.
making them nothing but sex symbols. And I understand they were just marketing to adolescent, teenage boys because they thought um, that's what went to go see horror films. One prime example is that I don't know if have you ever seen Jennifer's Body?
I have seen it. I saw it last year, and I was just thinking about that movie today. I need to see it again, but I remember just feeling like so about it.
Uh-huh. And that's a prime example because when I first saw Jennifer's Body and I saw the negative reviews, and I was like, damn, they're really hating on, hating on Megan Fox because, Megan Fox she can't act. And I thought she did pretty good in the role. I thought both her and oh boy,
Amanda Seyfried.
and Amanda Seyfried, they
Yeah.
did a fantastic job. I actually thought it was a nice story. It was has nothing to do about just exploiting women. It was just two women, their friendship and the relationship between Needy and Jennifer. And
Hmm.
it seemed it was more that was more on fault on Jennifer's fault because it seemed like she was more jealous of Needy than she was, even though Jennifer was called the hot girl.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I would have rewatched that for this chat, but yeah, I remember her just kind of owning her own, like her going through a traumatic event and coming back to life and kind of just getting revenge on folks. And so that's kind of like the trope of, you know, women taking power after their trauma. So trying to have something to be taken away from them only to just become stronger,
Hmm.
which a lot of males aren't going to like. They want the woman to be, weak and helpless and not be as powerful as she was after she got, the R word. I don't want to say it on your channel, but yeah, so that much I remember.
Yeah, because that's what I was so disappointed that unfortunately, but I blame the marketing people. Obviously, a bunch of men that marketed that film because of the making out scene that Megan and Amanda have. That I guess they thought they know. It was going to you have two hot women going after each other, and that's going to bring men's butts in the seats. And no, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. The movie is not about that.
No, no.
Mhm. Another film. Have you seen The Descent?
Yes, I have. I love that one.
Yes, yes. I actually compared the Descent to John Carpenter's remake, The Thing, because they both have interesting. Because you have in John Carpenter's Descent, you have an all male cast, and in Neil Marshall's The Descent, you have an all female cast, and they both have similar situations. And The Descent shows to me that you can actually have a fit all female cast in a horror movie, and these are very strong women. They're adventurous. They do a lot of crazy stuff that you would not think a woman's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have a decent final girl in the film. They're not all, and they all can take care of themselves. That's one of the things I really appreciate about The Descent.
Yeah, I
Mm,
love that movie because it does show them, with their history of doing drops and rock climbing and stuff. This wasn't their first outing and doing something like this. They were knowledgeable and they got through it for the most part. They almost could have, had more than one person make it. But yeah, they all were strong women and they were just in some weird, unique situation that most people, or looks like all of the people who've gotten trapped in there, have not been able to escape. So
mhm.
yeah, I love it.
Now, obviously, my question to you is, what made you decide to become a YouTuber, and how did the channel name Rainbow Fright come from?
Yeah, sure. So, before the pandemic, I was actually a notary public and loan signing agent. So I was going around to people's houses and jobs or even coffee shops and helping them out with mortgage loans or whatever they needed notarized. And so, but when the pandemic hit, I couldn't work anymore, neither could my husband. So we were both just trying to pivot. We were collecting unemployment and we're like, okay, so what's the next move? What are we going to do? And so, with my film background, I was just thinking about YouTube a lot because YouTube had always been on my mind since it was a
Mhm,
thing. I just never had the time to really explore it. And so I decided, yeah, let's go ahead and start a YouTube channel, see what's up. And so I was just kind of going through all the ideas of what to talk about. I thought about doing gaming, food related stuff. I obviously had true crime on my channel earlier and horror story narrations and poems and things like that. I just wanted to do it all. Then I narrowed it down to true crime narrations and horror movies. I thought about movies and then I just narrowed it down to horror just to kind of make it even more niche.
mhm,
And again, if I had to pick a favorite, it would have to be horror. And so I just went that direction. So I was like, okay, well, with the horror story narrations and poems and the true crime, it all just kind of makes sense to do all that together. And So yeah, that's how that came out. And then as far as the name, I was just trying to come up with stuff that kind of described me as a person, because you might see me and be like, you like horror? Why? Like, you don't even seem like you would like some crazy dark stuff like that. And so that's kind of I feel like my personality too, because like I like the dark, but I also like the light as well, as far as entertainment goes, or even as far as clothing goes. I could be in all black and just dark clothing and dark lipstick, and that's my style. But I also like to go out and just wear rainbow colored things as well, and be pink and bright and all of that. But I just, like the best of both worlds, I guess. And so I had different names kind of lined up, and Rainbow Fright just sounded the best to me. So I just feel like it describes both sides of my personality, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
Yeah.
because people always ask me, "Where did you come up with your channel name?" And it's a fascinating story. There's this short story called "The Miser's Gold" that I heard when I was little, and I never forgot it. Very nice ghost story, and that's where the horror miser comes from.
Okay.
Obviously, my name is Lamont, and my nickname is Monty.
Yeah.
Uh, Back during my clubbing days before I got married, got married. Back during my clubbing days, my boys called me Monty G.
Oh,
Hence
okay.
the horror miser Monty G.
Oh, all right. Cool. Very cool.
People love when I tell that story.
Before I was married.
Yeah, yeah. Had a lot of fun during that times, but I'm too old for that now. Knees are not the same.
Oh, I
when
hear you. I hear you. It's a struggle for me too sometimes. I hear you.
um so basically when and obviously the next time, obviously as being a woman on YouTube, and I hear this a lot from some of the other YouTube from women, trolls. Do you always have to deal with unfortunately unsatisfactory is trolls?
Um, Fortunately, I've not had to deal with too many trolls, really. I've had a couple of comments here and there, but I've not had somebody come back and be obsessive or anything like that. So,
Yeah, you're
fingers
lucky.
crossed that keeps going.
Yeah, lucky. I really haven't had that many problem with trolls. I did had a producer. I'm assuming he was a producer of a horror movie that I reviewed, and for some reason, I guess he couldn't take constructive criticism.
Oh no.
Because he tells me, I tell them that because most of horror films always have this typical cabin in the woods setting, and even
Mhm.
though it took place at a farmhouse, it was still the typical cabin in the woods setting. And he's like, "No, it's not. This is a farm in the woods." Blah, 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 blah. Like, dude, what are you talking about? This is like it's the same thing. And same thing. I even gave him praise because the horror movie was one of the first horror movies I saw that actually used American Sign Language, and I thought the actress that did it did a great job. Yeah,
Yeah.
it did have Evil Dead vibes in it because it's basically sort of the same premise. The same premise. And I said that, and I told him, I says, "Look, I'm not going to lie to my subscribers. This is what I do. This is when I first started. I told everyone, you're going to get my honest opinion.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Not
I'm
my
all
fault.
about that.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Um, Probably one of the few questions I have left. What do you expect to see women to do more in horror films, whether in front of the camera or behind the camera? What do you expect to see women to do more in horror films? I mean, obviously we've seen some success that women have. I thought Nita DaCosta did a fantastic job with the Candyman remake.
Oh yeah.
But- Yeah, but what do you expect to see women to do more in horror films?
Well, I definitely expect to see them just doing everything more, as far as, writing, directing, being, the leads in these films. We just recently had Megan that came out, which was written by Akilah Cooper and James Wan, who also wrote Malignant. And it's just super cool to see, her blow up. I liked Megan. I had a good time with it, but it's not going to be in my top 10. Absolutely loved Malignant. And then we recently got another horror movie called Nanny, from Nikyatu Jusu. That recently just came out, and it's just awesome. It's just a breath of fresh air to get that perspective, because we don't get to see that in mainstream media. And so we're just going to start seeing just different cultures. I feel like stories from different cultures, and just a whole lot of stories from the women's perspective, and having them be in more strong roles than the final girl or the sex symbol. We've gotten things like Raw and Titan, where we just have women coming into their own, kind of like Carrie from back in the 70s. But that one wasn't so much her like gaining power, even though we can interpret it as that.
Mhm.
Carrie was more of like, if a woman does gain her power, be careful, because the world is going to crumble down around you. Instead of like praising her having that power, we're going to now, these new years, have these women come into their own, and be maybe the villain but also the hero at the same time, and make it to the end and survive. So yeah, I'm excited for the future in horror, for women, because we're just getting a bunch of great stuff lately, even though they've been in horror since forever ago, even 100 years ago. We just don't hear about them as much. They're not written in history like they should have been, and we're just now finally getting the credit that we deserve and becoming more active, so it's exciting.
Yes, yeah. Women have come a long way since Fay Ray and King Kong up until now with Megan and Clea Cooper. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. They're actually. I just found out. I think it was just last night or today that they're going to be making a Megan 2.0 is going to come out in 2025. So it definitely is
Oh,
getting
okay.
this. Oh yeah, I knew it was getting the sequels. I love Megan.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a big old franchise just like Chucky. Gotta
So,
be.
are you Team Megan or are you Team Chucky?
Well, I haven't seen the remake of Child's Play from like 2018 or something like that.
Yeah.
But I would definitely have to say Team Chucky. That's my boy right there. That's my boy.
My one of my colleagues from the horror hangout crew, from Jen and Chris and Jen, she's a huge Chucky fan,
Oh
and she
yeah.
she did not like Megan at all. So I always I tease her.
You can like both. It's
I,
okay.
I know, yeah, because I know I enjoy the Child's Play franchises, but I'm glad that we're having a representative, because that was going to be my next question too. Would you like to see a female become a horror icon like Freddie, Jason, and Michael?
Yeah, that would be really cool. Art has a new sidekick that's a little girl,
Hmm.
and it would be cool if she grew up somehow and became, our new, uh, female presenting, villain, or somebody completely new. That would be awesome. You know, Even though it's a negative character, but we still root for Freddie. We still root for Michael. So I wouldn't mind seeing a woman in that light. So yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay. All right, so that's basically all the questions I had for you regarding Women in Horror Month. What I like to do right before I end in anything like that, I always give you a chance to shrill what's going on your channel. So, what's going on Rainbow Fright?
Oh man, put me on the spot because I'm still working things out. But right now, I've just been going super hard on putting out shorts. I plan to
Hmm.
put out, a bunch more shorts here soon. And I'm actually currently working on a Nightmare on Elm Street ranking video. So that'll be out whenever it does come out. And some other ranking videos as well of other franchises. And I do want to do a video on women in horror as well. I just don't have the specifications on that just yet. But yeah, videos are in the works, and just keep an eye out for all my shorts that have been coming out.
Oh yes, I've been watching them too. Yes,
Oh,
yes.
cool. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, now horror fans, once again, this is Danae Rainbow Fright. If you've not subscribed to her channel, her link for her channel will be in the description box below. So definitely, please give her a listen. She's an incredible YouTuber, and you are definitely going to love her, especially when she does her tweet tweet. I love that. All right, horror fans, once again, my name is Lamont Smith, better known as the Horror Miser Money G, and always remember that horror rules. And I'll see you guys later.